Hello everyone, this is Dr. Ron Cravey. Welcome you to part 4 of training for local evaluators on the Iowa 21st Century program. In this video we're going to discuss section 4 of the local evaluation form, GPRA measures. So let's go over to the form and take a look. GPRA measures is in our required section list. It's number 4 on the list. Let's scroll down to that section. And here, partnerships, parent involvement, and here's our GPRA measures. GPRA, if you're not familiar with it, GPRA stands for Government Performance and Results Act. All federal programs basically are supposed to follow and use what's involved in that act to evaluate their programs. Now, it's important to notice that the GPRA data is basically measuring student achievement based on how many regular attendees needed improvement. Sometimes you may not have that data. There was a misstep in the data gathering and you didn't really know how many needed. If you can't really figure that out, you'll just have to use your total number of regular attendees, which of course will show less achievement than you wish, but you have to come up with some number for that. It's important to notice that that reading scores can be used for measures 4 through 6, we'll get in a minute, improvement in English, and vice versa. Once again, just as we discussed in the attendance section, this should be the same data that you reported online to the APR data system. It should match, so it ought to be easy to get to. So this section on GPRA measures has a data table to fill out in which you're going to put the assessment tools and you're going to enter your data and then you're going to discuss it in this next section. So let's take a look at the data table. The data table consists of 5 main areas, and for each of the areas you're going to list the assessment tool. For example, let's start out by looking at this first area, which is measures 1 through 3, improvement in mathematics. First thing you would do is list your assessment tool. Now, because if you have both elementary and secondary students, you may be using 2 different assessment tools. You should list both of those. Appropriate assessment tools can vary from student grades to the ubiquitous standardized test, which everyone says is the best. The feds do, so if you have that data, that's what I would use. So once you've entered the assessment tool, then you just type it in there. Then the next thing you should do is fill out the data. Notice there's a column for the number of students needing improvement, regular students, not total, the number of students who improved, and the percentage who improved. Let's take a look at this first one. The number of elementary regular program participants who improved in mathematics from fall to spring. This doesn't cover summer. GPRA is about the school year. So let's assume in our students that we had 100 total students and 40 of them needed improvement in mathematics in our elementary program. And of those 40, 27 actually showed improvement in our whatever measure we're using, standardized test probably. Then you need to put the percentage. To figure percentage, if you're not a math person, it's pretty easy. Grab a calculator, take the number who improved, the smaller number, divide by the total number needing improvement, the larger number. It equals, we get 0.675. We want to add 2 decimal points to get the percentage, which would give us 67.5%. But because of reasons I won't go into right now, you want to round that off to just 68%. If you remember your math, you always round up if the next number is 5 or greater, and you round and you leave it if it's 4 or less. So we're going to say that we had 68% of the students improved. Next, you want to look at your high school, your secondary program. Let's say we've got only 40 of the high school students came to the program. 12 of them needed improvement, and of those who improved, 8 actually improved. Once again, we need to figure percentage. We pull up our calculator. We take the smaller number, which is the number of students who improved, and we divide by the larger number, which is the total number that needed improvement, and we get 0.66666, which is rounds off to 67%. Then we want the number of all 21st century programs of all of these, which is a total. Number 3 is a total. 40 plus 12 is 52. 27 plus 8 is 35. Then we need to figure the percentage. You cannot add the percentages up. That would be more than 100%, so obviously that's wrong. Once again, you have to pull up the calculator. You take the smaller number, the number that improved, 35. You divide by the larger number, the students needing improvement, 52. We get a percentage of, this case, the 67.3, 3 smaller, so we round that off to 67%. What do you do if you don't have any secondary students in the program? That means you would have no data for these columns, that row. So what would go in the total? Very easy. You just bring down your elementary, because that's the same as your total. Please check your math, especially your percentage. We have several every year that don't have the correct percentages. As science and math teachers, that bothers us. All right, measure the next sections, measures 4 through 6. Improvement in English. I would point out, as we said up at the top of this, you can use reading scores for improvement in English, vice versa. Normally for elementary students, which is number 4, you don't have English grades many times. Use your reading. So what assessment tool did you use? Once again, if you have elementary and secondary students, list both of those tools, those assessment tools. Just like we did in the math section, we type in the number of elementary students that needed improvement, regular program participants who needed improvement. Let's say it's 60, and we did a bang-up job. 55 of them improved, which means we take our calculator. 55 divided by 60 tells us that it's 91.6. 92% of our students showed improvement. That's very, very good. Then you do your high school, then your total, exactly like we did the math. I don't want to do all of these one after another because I feel like that I'm insulting your intelligence if I do that. So let's move down to the next part, which is improvement in proficiency. This is for students who are not proficient. You can show improvement and not become proficient. So this is 7 and 8. 7 is elementary regular participants who are below proficiency in reading. 8 is secondary students, regular participants, who are below proficiency in mathematics. Two different things. Elementary is reading, secondary is mathematics. So you're obviously going to have two assessment tools. It is perfectly okay to use the same assessment tool for improvement in proficiency as you did in normal improvement. Usually these numbers are lower because when students are below proficiency, it's very difficult for them to catch up in 1 year many times. But you fill these numbers out just the same. I'm going to make this easy and say we had 100 students who were not proficient in reading, and 10 of them improved, which is 10%. I can do that in my head. Middle school, we had 10 students that needed it, and 2 did it, which is 20%. Notice there's no total because you can't find a total since you're talking about reading for elementary and mathematics for secondary. So there's no total on that. Measures 9 through 11, we're going to put GPRA numbers for homework and class participation. The assessment tool that you have to use is the student teacher survey that we discussed in the very first video. And of course, the problem is GPR wants us to talk about homework and class participation with one number, and the form has that broken down into 2 different places. You're going to have to combine those somehow. The easiest way is probably to total them up, but you may want to go the extra mile and only use students who are need improvement in both. That's going to bring your numbers down, but that's okay. It's totally up to you. There's no guidelines on how to decide that. Remember, what's important is the data needs to be accurate and needs to match what you entered into the APR system. So we put our assessment tool, which is going to be the teacher survey. So let's put in the number of elementary regular program participants with teacher reported improvement, that's the survey, and homework completion class participation. Usually these numbers tend to be fairly high. We'll say 60, 50. Once again, whip out the old calculator. 50 divided by 60 is 83.3%, rounded off to 83%. Middle high school pro that needed participants, maybe we had 26 students that needed improvement and 12 improved. Whip out the calculator. 12 divided by 26 gives us 46.1, 46%. This one we do a total. 60 and 26 is 86. 50 and 12 is 62. To do our percentage, we take 62 divided by 86, and we end up with 72%. The last section on GPR is student behavior. Once again, we get that data provided by aggregating the teacher surveys, and it's one section, behaving well in class, so there's no controversy or how to figure it. You just enter the numbers just like we did above: elementary, secondary, and a total. That's all there is to filling out the GPR table. Important things: it's regular attendees, you can use reading for English, and it needs to be the same data that's in the APR system. Once you have the table filled out with all your data, then you want to discuss it. What do you do in the discussion? Well, talk about if you used the actual number of students needing improvement or if you had to use the total of regular attendance. Discuss your high-performing areas and your low-performing, but especially brag on yourself. You know, it's okay to say things like, gosh, we did really well in improvement, not so well in proficiency, and give the numbers. 47% of students did this, 12% did this. Describe your data collecting instruments, especially if you're not using the standardized test. Talk about that. Then tell us about difficulties on the GPRA measures. Obviously, one difficulty is the homework and class participation being 2 separate items, but you may have others that you wish to discuss there. And then step back and pretend you're going to assess your program based solely on GPRA measures. How would you stand up? How would you do? That's a good thought discussion for you, and it lets you realize that a lot of the DOE, they look at attendance and GPRA pretty much solely is what they look at. So it's important that you realize, gee, how well am I doing based just on that? Just tell us what you do. And of course, brag, talk about anything else you wish on your GPRA measures. and you put it all in this nice blue box type ordeal. Well, that's the discussion. I hope it helps you find it easier to fill out your GPRA measures. And we thank you for coming to the session. And if you, as always, you have any questions, contact one of these three people. So thank you for all you do. Goodbye.